What is going on, Miami Dolphins fans? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. I was actually doing kind of like a little bit of a side project, just really trying to see where Jaylen Waddle was falling in regards to targets, receptions, overall production through 11 games this year compared to where he was last year. And it kind of hit me. It's like, you know what? A lot of us, and I fall into this category as well. It feels like so far in 2023, so much of the offense is funneled through Tyreek Hill. And I've had the conversation with people in the comments of previous videos. It's like, would we benefit by spreading those targets around? Because you look at how this offense ran last year, and it was like it felt like the offense was funneled through Tyreek and Waddle. And we're all wondering, like, you know what? When's a tight end going to emerge? When's a third pass catcher going to emerge? Who's going to step out besides those two? And it's not that Jaylen Waddle is doing bad this year, and we'll get to all that in a second, but it really feels like so far in 2023, and I shouldn't say so far, it's an 11-week sample size, it feels like the offense really funnels through Tyreek Hill. So I wanted to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into that. So I actually made a couple of graphics just so I'm not just rattling off a bunch of numbers and trying to make you guys remember things in your head. But as you'll see, the data was kind of interesting to me. So like I said, I wanted to put out a quick video, kind of talk perception versus reality a little bit as to where things stand with this offense and who it's funneling through this year compared to last year. So we're going to start with the Jaylen Waddle graphic. We'll pop that up right now. And the biggest thing to keep in mind when considering Jaylen Waddle this year, he missed the full game. He missed that offensive output showing against the Denver Broncos. And then he's kind of missed bits and pieces here and there with some nagging injuries. So obviously his numbers this year are going to be a little bit lighter than last year, but despite missing a game, he only has 10 fewer targets, just 4 fewer receptions. But the biggest difference between this year and last year is those yards. 272 fewer yards this year, despite just those 4 less receptions. And then you look at his yards, obviously with that difference, it's a yards per catch thing. 17.2 yards per catch last year versus 13.3 this year. And I say that just knowing that 13.3 yards per catch isn't bad. It's actually pretty good. If you look at this year's stats, he's right around guys like CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley. Like I said, 13.3 isn't bad. It's just that 17.2 is absolutely absurd. Jaylen Waddle led the NFL in yards per catch last year. And now if you think about maybe if a guy only had like 20, 30 receptions and they were some bombs, maybe he's a deep threat guy only, you could understand that. But with the number of targets and just overall yards and everything that Jaylen Waddle had, like I said, 17.2 is just absolutely bonkers. But another big difference, besides just the yards, it's those plays that go for 6. Half as many touchdowns through 11 games this year, half as many games going over 100 yards. So from that, I concluded that, you know what, maybe it's not just an overall target issue as much as, and I don't even want to say issue, but like why the offense feels like it's funneling through Tyreek so much more this year. Maybe it's not just targets, but maybe it's the fact that we're not seeing as many of those impact plays. And we're going to see those out of Tyreek because I'm kind of curious, like I said, what do Tyreek's numbers look between the two years that Mike McDaniel has been the head coach and play caller. So we're going to throw his graphic up. And this, honestly, like I said, this is where I was a little bit surprised just to see how similar Tyreek's production has been between the 2 years. Because like I said, it felt like offense is funneling through Tyreek so much more in 23 compared to 22. But take a look at these numbers. Just 5 more targets this year, just 1 more reception this year, 91 more receiving yards, so not a pile more, but this is where that difference comes in. And once again, it's those impact plays. 10 touchdowns. 10 touchdowns already this year compared to 4 through 11 games last year. And then as you can see there, he's eclipsed the 100-yard mark 7 out of 11 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's a reason he's on pace to have the all-time leading receiver in a single season this year. But similar to Jaylen Waddle, the actual number of opportunities and the receptions, it's basically at the same point that it was last year at this point in time. So I'm not necessarily drawing any conclusions based on these numbers alone, but rather just really trying to add some clarity, like I said, like perception versus reality, that is out there regarding this offense, and it's potentially funneling through Tyreek too much. I'm going to take the graphic off the screen here right now. And quite honestly, like I said, I'm not trying to draw any conclusions on that, because quite honestly, it still could be the case that maybe the offense does funnel through Tyreek too much. A couple of reasons that we've talked about in the past. The obvious one of, if you get more guys involved, if you're not constantly funneling everything to Tyreek Hill, well, guess what? Less eyes on Tyreek Hill, more opportunities moving throughout the game where he's maybe not facing the double teams and constantly getting the eye of the defense, but at the same time, keeping him healthy. Less targets likely equals less receptions, equals less touches, equals less times people touching him. So likely getting him a little bit healthier as well. But like I said, I want to hear what your thoughts on that, because I was a little bit surprised. I truly thought that the offense was funneling through Tyreek Hill much more this year compared to last year. But the numbers will show you that it's really not changing too much from year to year. It's the impact plays. It's those big plays that are probably a little bit more ingrained in our head versus last year. It was a little bit more spread out. Waddle with more touchdowns, Waddle with a higher yards per catch. But that is what I've got for this kind of comparative analysis video. If you didn't check it out yet, we did an instant reactions to the Miami Dolphins signing Jason Pierre-Paul to help kind of fill the shoes of Jalen Phillips, who obviously is gone for the season. That one still pains. And then also, obviously, get subscribed if you haven't already. We'll be back throughout this week. We got 2 preview videos for Sunday's game against the Washington Commanders. But that is what I've got. Let's hear from you. And until next time, Dolphins fans, fins up.